TY going for the jugular here. He does come in for a surround. The Colossi are going down. TY furiously macroing. It's too much for Stats. GG. Just a magnificent Terra vs. Protoss game right there. You cannot find.
According to Austrian researcher Michael Wagner, one of the earliest reliable sources that uses the term esports is a 1999 press release announcing the launch of the Online Gamers Association. But starting the history of esports in 1999 seems to be doing it a disservice, especially when the first video game was actually released in 1958. That game, by the way, was called Tennis for Two, and I think you could make an argument for it actually being an esport, considering it was a competitive electronic game where two people played against each other. So I guess before we really dive into the history of esports, we need to define it. According to Wikipedia, I know, super credible, but hear me out, because I think this definition really nails it on the head. Esports are a form of competition that is facilitated by electronic systems, particularly video games. The input of players and teams, as well as the output of the esports system, are mediated by human-computer interfaces. So, to be an esport, you need 1. Competition, 2. Competition that uses electronic systems, and 3. Players or teams. Which means that Tennis for Two, in my opinion, was not only the first video game, but it was actually the first esport too. And if you're sitting there thinking to yourself, yes, but an audience is an important part of esports, I would suggest that Tennis for Two had that as well. It was debuted at a 3-day exhibition where people lined up not only to play, but also to watch others play the game. Fast forward to 1972. Pong, which many people actually incorrectly cite as being the first video game, is released. Pong becomes a wildly successful arcade game and paves the way for arcade competitions to start popping up in the 1980s. While Atari hosted the first official video game competition in 1980, there were many smaller local competitions popping up in arcades across the country. Now, these arcade competitions aren't the typical esports we think of today. Gamers weren't necessarily playing against each other, although they could be, but instead they were playing to beat each other's high scores. The 1990s saw the rise of PC gaming, and with it, the real-time strategy and first-person shooter genres. But local tournaments also flourished during this time in the fighting game community with titles like Mortal Kombat and Street Fighter. All in all, the 90s were a good decade for esports, with Red Annihilation's tournament for Quake and the release of the esport juggernaut StarCraft. The Cyber Elite Professional League was also founded in the 90s, and it's considered to be the first esports league. So if the 90s was the decade that really began to put esports on the map, then the 2000s were the decade that began to shape esports into the phenomenon that we know today. The spread of internet availability was one of the most crucial developments for esports in the 2000s. Players could more easily compare scores, games became more complex, and home consoles began shipping with internet connectivity. During this time, official esports competitions and leagues that we still see today were founded, including the Korean Esports Association, the World Cyber Games, the Electronic Sports World Cup, and Major League Gaming, which is now considered to be one of the largest and most successful esports leagues. The MOBA genre was born in 2003 with Defense of the Ancients, or as you more likely know it as, Dota. While Dota is still around, the game dominating the MOBA space today was also released in the 2000s. League of Legends was released in 2009 and continues to be one of the most popular esports on the scene today. Halo 2 was broadcast on television in 2006, but it wasn't until Twitch released in 2011 that esports got a huge bump in viewership. Twitch was critical to the success of esports because the traditional broadcasts of basketball or football didn't allow for the sociability or fan interaction that is at the heart of competitive gaming. Today, the roots of esports are alive and well in the fighting game competitions like EVO and international StarCraft tournaments. New titles like Overwatch are hitting the scene, and the gamers that dominate the competition are becoming celebrities in their own right. As technology continues to advance, so will the sport of esports. What are your predictions for competitive gaming in the next decade? Will virtual reality become part of the industry? Will we see esports leagues develop and model after traditional sports? Will a new game release that takes the esports crown from League of Legends? Let us know in the comments down below. If you like this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to see more from us. Thank you all so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.